This time, Louis van Gaal's Ajax, Europe's coolest ever team.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible, trawling through history to decide just who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn. This might genuinely finally be an Oxford United free podcast, and joining me as ever is the king of data, it's Jamie Rooney.
Louis van Gaal's army! Louis van Gaal's army! Do you hear the fans?
You are the king of data, you know this stuff, and of course you would be able to, I'm sure, regale with me with where does Louis van Gaal, or Van Gaal, where does he rank among Man United's most successful managers of the past 40 years?
As we're about to find out, Louis van Gaal, another brilliant pronunciation classic for us, has managed quite a few clubs, and he's managed to win league championships with every single club he's managed, including AZ Alkmaar, apart from one. And can you guess what that one club is where he failed to win a league championship? I would literally rank him between David Moyes and Jose Mourinho, because that's exactly where he stood.
The website I looked at, which admittedly didn't look very professional, did sort of indicate that David Moyes might have had a higher win ratio, which would be quite frightening. But we don't want to dwell on such a dubious period. We're bringing back a guest who has generally focused on not necessarily the greatest team. Welcome back, Shane Guiliano. How you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me on for the third time.
Third time of asking. When you've been on before, Shane, we have tended to focus on maybe some of the, I don't know if it's fair to call the Australia team an underachiever, but it's certainly fair to call Zaire 1974 arguably not one of the world's best.
Yeah, but my goodness, weren't they entertaining? I mean, those stories were fabulous. And then you threw Marseille after it, which was just a joy to listen to the corruption that went on there. They're fabulous teams to talk about.
Before we get stuck into tonight's side, and it is an absolutely fantastic one. Last week, of course, we did Fulham and the amazing Europa League, to get my correct terminology, cup run under Roy Hodgson. And one of the things that came up, and we tasked you with a bit of homework, didn't we, Jamie, in terms of, unusually, in every season, Roy Hodgson's Fulham scored almost exactly the same number of goals, 38 and 39, something like that. And we wondered if this was a thing. So, Jamie, is this a thing?
Unfortunately, the idea of it was far more exciting than the reality of the stats. But it is a thing for Roy Hodgson. So just to kind of give you the data on those two seasons with Fulham, he's pretty much averaging 1 goal a game for, and almost 1 goal a game against. And that's pretty consistent in his time at Fulham. His career statistics is 1.4 goals per game and 1.1 against. And he generally keeps that theme with a few blips. When he's in Scandinavia, in Sweden with Malmo, he jumps into the giddy heights of 2.2 and 2.3 goals per game when he's winning championships. And also one of his first seasons at Halmstad as well, it's 2.2. But yeah, Roy Hodgson, I think, is fairly consistent in trying to level up the amount of goals to games that he performs in as his teams. But I couldn't help but kind of draw some conclusions between another great manager of ours that we love to kind of bring into these podcasts, Claudio Ranieri. And it turns out they're pretty much identical in terms of their career statistics. So Roy Hodgson, 1.4 goals per game over all of his games. Claudio Ranieri, 1.5. Roy Hodgson, 1.1 goals against per game. Claudio Ranieri, 1.1. So, and if you want to do an extreme and compare that against Guardiola's 2.5 goals per game he's managed against 0.8. So you can see there are differences, but not a lot of difference between Claudio Ranieri and Roy Hodgson.
You could also do a comparison of Ranieri v Hodgson's cities visited in managerial career too, because both of them have been absolutely everywhere.
It's an opportunity for a quiz question, Graham, isn't it?
It definitely is. I can't answer this because I do know the answer to this. But the question, of course, is, out of those two managers, Ranieri or Hodgson, if you had to put your kind of life savings, Shane, which of those two do you think has managed more teams? I can give you one tiny bit of information, which is a reasonable piece of information, that Ranieri's, when he managed Leicester, that was his 17th club. I don't know if that helps or not.
I reckon Hodgson, actually. I'll take a punt at Hodgson. I reckon Hodgson's clocked in silly amounts of teams. By the way, are we counting going back to teams as that, or completely separate teams?
Going back, they count.
Yeah.
So
Going back.
Hodgson. I'm going with Hodgson. He's gone everywhere.
Is that your final answer?
Go on, Jamie.
Shane?
I'm having a dip at Hodgson. I'm taking my punt at Hodgson on this.
Well, I can tell you that when Claudio Ranieri returned to Calgary for the second time, it was his 22nd managerial post.
Oh, my goodness
and when
gracious
Roy
me.
Hodgson returned to Crystal Palace for the second time, it was his 23rd managerial post. Roy Hodgson.
God bless you, Roy. You made up for that 1 year at Liverpool that didn't quite work as a Liverpool fan.
it didn't even make a year there, did he?
No, he did not. In his defence, they were dark days at Liverpool, and I think it was a pretty tough gig.
We obviously have this fact that Roy Hodgson, 38 goals for Fulham, and that would be a 38-game season. The team we're going to talk about tonight, Ajax. This isn't in the era. This is in Johan Cruyff's first season in charge, 85-86, 34-game season. They, by comparison, scored just the 120 goals. And they didn't win the league. So, I mean, this is one for you, Jamie, at some point. They finished with a goal difference of plus 85, and they still finished 8 points behind PSV.
That's awesome.
So this would have been the PSV that would have gone on and won the Champions League as well, wouldn't it, in the late 80s? So
the other sort of carryover we had from the Fulham podcast, which is sort of relevant to tonight, is kind of unbeknown to any of us, even Stu, who was on the pod kind of representing Fulham, was that Jari Litmanen, Roy Hodgson signed him for Fulham in that desperate attempt to stay up, which they somehow successfully did. I don't think Litmanen actually even played. I mean, he was obviously quite plagued by injuries, but it's interesting. I think if you were to ask any of us here, we all think Litmanen is an absolute hero player. I mean, Shane, he was at Liverpool for a couple of years or so. Great memories there.
Loved him. One of the reasons I actually went off Gerard Houllier was Jari Litmanen, because when he signed him, I thought, you're a genius. When he didn't play him, I went, well, you're an idiot. So it went from genius to idiot quite quickly. And he also did a quote, one of my absolute favourite quotes by a football manager. After he signed him, and when he went to get rid of him, they were asking why he'd get rid of what was once one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. He goes, he was a bit too good for us. And I remember hearing that going, I don't think you should manage anyone again if that's your quote, sir. He legitimately was better than everyone else on the pitch. He was legitimately so much better. He was putting passes to areas that he just thought players had run in, and they just looked at him quizzically going, I'm sorry, did you want me to go there? And he was looking at them back going, well, where else were you going to go? And he was literally playing around for fun because he was clearly so much more talented, brain-wise, than almost everyone we had. He was just a bit, when we had him at 30, and I think he probably was even earlier in his career, he was just slow. So he's one of those guys whereby he didn't have a lot of speed, but he's on the ball, he was ridiculously talented.
And Jamie, I know you're a big fan of his.
For the Ajax team that we're going to talk about, yeah, I love Litmanen. He's a number 10. He actually came in, as we're going to find out, he came in to replace Dennis Bergkamp, who had moved on to Inter Milan.
I would have thought Litmanen was your kind of player, as such was his reputation for getting injured. He had the nickname Man of Glass by the end of it.
His record wasn't terrible at Ajax, but as soon as he went to Barca on the free transfer, the wheels fell off. And that's why Barca got rid of him too, because they just went, well, there's no point. You cost too much money on a salary. Liverpool got him. He got injured a lot. We didn't play him, and then he never played really after that. He really just had his Ajax years, and then it just all fell apart for him.
So let's get stuck into this Ajax side. This is an unbelievable era and an unbelievable team. I mean, Jamie, we were talking about this beforehand, weren't we, Jamie, that we've done a few teams lately where you've had one or two star players. In fact, we had, Napoli is a prime example. We did Napoli, and they weren't quite a one-man team, but I mean, such was Maradona's, such was his impact. But also, actually, the rest of the team was relatively non-stellar, and certainly what it went on to do. But I think if you look at this team, it is difficult to imagine a better or more showbiz starting 11.
It's the Dutch national team for 15 years. Even in 1990-91, they had half the Dutch national team in there that ended up leaving. I mean, at one stage or another, 15 years of Dutch internationals went through Ajax. It's quite freaky. It's a heck of a team.
It really is an absolute glossary of superstars. I mean, to contextualise it, if we just break down the 94-95 season, which we're going to focus on as where we judge the greatness of this team, players that would have featured in 18 games or more, there's 15 players. Of those 15 players, all but, I think, one, which is Van Vossen, will go on and play at one of Europe's biggest clubs, Barcelona, AC Milan, Juventus, Manchester United. It's just staggering, the talent. And a lot of this talent came through the youth system. And it came through the youth system with the coach as well, Louis van Gaal, who started his time at Ajax as the youth coach.
How does this era begin? I mean, is there sort of credit in the bank before he takes over, or, is it him?
It's Ajax. We don't need to explain who Ajax are and what their history is. They are one of the most successful football teams in European football. Van Gaal takes over from Leo Beenhakker in 91. Prior to that, Ajax had been winning championships, as they do, but they had been competing with their rivals Feyenoord and also PSV, who were a pretty tasty team back then. But when Van Gaal takes over in 91, it really is almost success from the start. He goes on to win Eredivisie. He also wins the UEFA Cup in 1993, beating Roma in the final. And he's just on collision course for incredible riches and success with this bunch of players that he's kind of been able to fortunately assemble on the cheap as well. The budget of this club is ridiculously low, not just how they put it together. The sums of money the players are getting per week. Edgar Davids and Clarence Seedorf were on less than £1,000 per week, playing in this Ajax team when they're winning the Champions League. It's staggering.
1990-91, they lost 4 internationals, as in 4 internationals left in the next 2 years, and they replaced them with kids who happened to be, funnily enough, internationals, or they ended up being internationals for years. But I mean, they lost Richard Witschke, Aaron Winter, Bergkamp, and Wim Jonk, and they were internationals. Yeah, and they're pretty good internationals. So you're sitting there, you've basically gutted 4 of your starting 11, and then you just sit there and replace them with kids who happen to be superstars. It's quite remarkable to be able to put a team together like this.
And this is Van Gaal's first job, isn't it? It's his first job in management as well. I mean, he obviously comes through the system, but that's his first senior management job, isn't it?
Absolutely that. When he takes over in 91, he's been the assistant to Beenhakker. He's been at the youth team level. But yeah, this is his first experience as a first-team coach.
As Shane says, it starts off with that loss of players, actually. The idea of trying to come to terms of a team without Bergkamp is, that would destroy it. Almost any side. I mean, teams you would build. There's no one who wouldn't build a team around Dennis Bergkamp, is there?
What's the style that he played? What did he really introduce in 91? As in, what was the formation and the setup to get him forward with all those superstars and kids?
They employ the classic 3-4-3, which is used quite heavily in Dutch football and has been for some time. He becomes obsessed with space. I think that's just a Dutch cultural thing. I mean, it's a tiny country, yet they seem to cram so much in it. They use space exceptionally well. And he's obsessed with possession as well. And I mean, there's a brilliant Dutch documentary about the Champions League winning side. And it's just a cutaway. And you hear Van Gaal going absolutely crazy at his players, like, just touch it once, just touch it once. Why would you take the risk? And it's just genius that's the mentality. It's like he's drilling into his players. And there's another clip, it's brilliant, where somebody's played a long ball when they had a pass that they could have played to a teammate a good few meters away. And he's going ballistic. Why would you knock it long? It's insane. It's crazy. When the player's right there, why would you do that? So I think it's that kind of hard-nosed kind of insanity that he has to drive his team forward, where compressing space, using it to his big advantage, pushing the opposition into their own half, and effectively keeping the ball. It's very similar to what we see with Pep's Guardiola and what we've seen with Klopp's gegenpress in the last few years. And Van Gaal was doing that before these boys were even thinking about becoming coaches.
And I suppose if you're going to do it anywhere, the heritage of Ajax and the total football there, I suppose that is an area. It is a club which is renowned both for the production of youth players and our kind of football philosophies. So if you're going to achieve it anywhere, it's sort of logical that you'd manage it there. And it is a young side that emerges.
6 of the key players in this key team come through the youth system. I mean, when you look at it, Edwin van der Sar, one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. Michael Reisinger, who goes on and has a great career at Milan, and well, not so great at Milan, but definitely at Barcelona. You've got the De Boer twins. I can never tell which is which.
Ron went to Rangers, didn't he?
They both went to Rangers.
Did Frank go to Rangers as well? I knew Ronald de Boer went to Rangers.
Yeah, they both had a spell at Rangers. It's amazing they both had a spell at Crystal Palace. I think maybe they were thinking, we're not going down that road again. And then you've got, 2 of the greatest midfielders of all time, Clarence Seedorf and Edgar Davids, who have also come through the youth ranks.
And Patrick Kluivert?
He also came through the youth system, famously 18 years old in the final versus Milan.
And they dragged Frank Rijkaard back as well, didn't they, for his last run?
How significant is Rijkaard's return to this? I mean, he's had his amazing career. You think about the Dutch national side at European, and he's had Rudy Voller spit at him. He's had sort of everything. Unbelievable career. With that youth team, they did need a couple of cool heads in there, didn't they?
Well, I thought they did because of who they lost as well. Aaron Winter and Wim Jonk were 2 midfielders, and they were both Dutch internationals. You're losing that out of your midfield. That's going to hurt a hell of a lot. You throw a couple of kids in there, you're going to need someone who's a level head. Rijkaard next to with one of my favourites, Danny Blind, as the 2 old guys in the team. They're both full internationals by the time they've done that. But Danny and Frank Rijkaard in the middle, at least you know that in a game whereby you lose, everyone's losing their heads around them, those 2 won't. And they've been there and done that, and they've seen absolutely everything. So they're absolutely brilliant bringing him back. Clever move. Clever move when you've got kids.
You do need a couple of wise heads in the team, and Van Gaal absolutely is aware of that. And I think, go back to your question, Graham, I think it's absolutely significant, Rijkaard in the team. And as Shane's already mentioned, playing with Danny Blind. What Van Gaal does is he pushes Rijkaard into midfield to allow him to play 3 at the back, generally with Danny Blind, the single centre-back. Rijkaard pushes into midfield, so he allows Seedorf and Davids to just do their buzzing around. He allows the wide players like Overmars or Philippe George, as it would have been, to stay wide and attack and push their fullbacks back. But what he does when they're playing against fairly decent teams or when they're out of possession, Rijkaard just sits in. That experienced campaigner that's able to kind of sit back in with Danny Blind and form a back 4 and make Ajax a bit more solid when they're playing against teams that can press them.
The record of this team is unbelievable when we get to 1994-95. But of course, the Eredivisie, the Dutch National League, I talk about Johan Cruyff's team getting 120 goals, but of course there is the theory that for every goal in the Premier League or Serie A counts about 7 in the Eredivisie. So, I mean, is that a fair criticism? Is that a kind of... obviously anyone who watched Van Veghorst for Man United last year might think that's a reasonable summary, but...
Mattia Kesman as a perfect example of why that's 7-1. He's always my favourite. Mattia Kesman comes over and is just absolutely car crash. Having said that, though, there's some pretty good players like Kanu's in that team as well, and he was pretty handy when he came over. There's been a lot of Dutch players that have come over and been very successful in the Premier League at probably not quite the same clip as they were in Holland, but they're pretty good anyway. So I would say 7-1, but I'd go with a 2-1 ratio.
A nod to one of our amazing guests, Phil Craig. He'll probably also confirm that the Dutch league is slightly easier to score goals when they signed Josie Altidore from AZ Alkmaar. Or as I think Phil coined him as Dozy cannot score or something like that.
Of the higher echelons of the league, there are good sides there. I mean, PSV, as we've talked about, are there 90, and it doesn't. For all the players they got, Feyenoord are a decent side there. It's not like there's an immediate translation into success for Van Gaal.
Generally, it's Ajax, PSV, or Feyenoord. Ajax is great rivals. But this is a period where PSV were and had a fantastic team. It's the team that came through where Ruud Gullit was at that particular moment, I think, as well. But it's that transition, I think. It's the fact that you've got a young coach in Van Gaal, hungry with this desire. He knows what's coming through the youth system, to the point where I think it was in the early 90s that they were scouting, their scouting network, Ajax's scouting network in Brazil, were pretty far down the road in signing Ronaldo. Some call him the real Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. Some call him Fat Ronaldo. I think that's a bit unfair, to be honest. But a brilliant player. So Ajax were in the marketplace. But I think it's the relationship that Phillips had, whatever commercial relationship they had inside Brazil at that moment, was able to swing the deal that Ronaldo went to PSV. But Van Gaal looks back on that now, and he was really relaxed about it because he knew he had Patrick Kluivert coming through the ranks. So they missed out on this young kid in Brazil, who's a hot kind of prospect. But they've got their own hot prospect in Patrick Kluivert, just waiting to come in. And Van Gaal would be proved correct on that, although some Newcastle fans may disagree.
It's in 93-94 that they win their first Eredivisie. That one is, quite a sort of normal record, I think, of 6 defeats, two draws. They're just, I think they finished a couple of points ahead of Feyenoord in that one. Is it sort of clear what is about to happen from winning just by 2-3 points to complete dominance? So that feels like it's not through signings. It's probably the project coming together.
Van Gaal is, as part of his style, as part of his training techniques, is known for doing rehearsed drills and repetition. A bit similar to Roy Hodgson we talked about with Fulham last week. Slightly different outcomes from the two managers, but very different personalities if we were to, compare them. I mean, Van Gaal is a very strong, vocal, angry man most of the time, with a full dossier seemingly in his left hand all of the time. It's almost like he can't leave the house. Most of us can't leave the house without our phone or our keys. I imagine Louis van Gaal can't leave his house without his phone, his keys, and his dossier in his left hand.
To add credence to the argument of just another year in the legs, 93-94, the ages of some of the best players they've got. The De Boer boys are 24, Seedorf's 18, Davids is 21, Litmanen's 23, Overmars is 21, Finidi George is 23, Kanu's 17, Kluivert's 17. Just putting an extra season of Eredivisie under these guys would have done them an absolute world of good.
It is quite incredible, and their record in that season is unbelievable. So they go through the season completely undefeated in the Eredivisie. 27 wins out of 34, so just the 7 draws. 106 goals, still shy of the goal difference of Johan Cruyff's. I noticed they're a mere plus 78. But I mean, it's just an extraordinary run. They, the win, then tied by 7 points from Roda, a team I'm not particularly familiar with, but they absolutely trounce Eindhoven and Feyenoord, who are 15, 18 points behind.
And it's still 2 points in the Eredivisie at that moment. It's still 2 points for a win. They hadn't made the transition like most of football to 3 points for the win.
It is an incredible performance that one. And like I say, the point we were sort of making at the top of the pod, it really feels like this is a complete story. It's difficult to pick one player who was driving this. This is very much a team performance, isn't it?
It's a ridiculously talented team performance too. I mean, there's just talent to burn everywhere.
I think this is where the drills have come in. This is where Van Gaal is, because Van Gaal has a reputation for delegating in players with clear, defined responsibilities. And I think that extra year, once they gain the belief of winning the Dutch Championship, they go into the following season with another year under the belt with Van Gaal's methods. They're a year wiser and older, but they've also got the confidence that they can win in their own backyard. So they can go and win in European competitions. And they kick off the Champions League with a game against the defending champions, AC Milan. And AC Milan had been in the last two Champions League finals. We know about one of them because we talked about Marseille winning in '93 with Shane not so long ago. And that incredible story. And then win the Champions League the following season. So Ajax go into their first Champions League campaign under Van Gaal with a home game against AC Milan, the defending champions.
And of course, that's the other part of this story is, and the one that probably translates. So when we talk about the 7 goals for each one, it's difficult to make the same argument when it comes to the Champions League. And this side not only goes through the entire Eredivisie season undefeated, it goes through the entire Champions League season undefeated. And as you say, it's not a straightforward draw, is it?
No, they've got Milan in the group. They've got the wonderfully named team Casino Salzburg and AEK Athens. And the Athens game's quite interesting because in the group stage, they go to Athens quite late in the summer, but still, anyone who's been to Greece in September will know that it's still ridiculously hot. And they go behind, and it's kind of the test of their character. They're away in Athens, who weren't a bad team at the time, and they're in incredible hot conditions. And then something that's also come from the playbook. Frank de Boer, a wonderful, creative defender, played at centre back or left of centre back. He had this amazing talent for just almost like a golfer, chip shots from one end of the pitch to the other. And in that AEK game, he kind of chips one in for Litmanen, who is one of our favourite players, as you've established, who then draws level, and then they go on to win the game. And De Boer afterwards is just saying, well, I used to do that for Bergkamp all the time, so it's something I'm used to. Again, we're getting back into that kind of familiarity of drills. And most famously, you've probably seen the goal against Argentina for the Netherlands in the World Cup in '98, one of the greatest goals of all time, Dennis Bergkamp. And that comes from a wonderful De Boer chip. And if you haven't listened to the Dutch commentary of that goal on YouTube, then I would strongly urge you to, as soon as you've finished listening to this episode of the podcast, I strongly urge you to go and listen to it, because it's some of the greatest football commentary you will ever hear. If you ever wanted to hear a football commentator almost orgasm in his own pants, this is the commentary where that, I think, happens.
Certainly, if you want to hear the word Dennis Bergkamp, or the name Dennis Bergkamp, repeated 7 different times at a repeated level of excitement consecutively, that is the place to go to.
Dennis Bergkamp! Ah! Dennis Bergkamp! So that's a really bad impression, Graham, but that's kind of the commentary where you'll get a flavour of.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, we did plan to find a way of dropping that into the podcast, but that's a bit too challenging. So we had to put up with Jamie's best impressions.
The De Boer boys actually scored in the Champions League. Both of them scored 2 goals, which for Frank De Boer, that's not too bad from a defender.
Yeah, he scored a brilliant free kick as well, and very confident. Something, again, that he practiced on a regular basis.
You know, it's hugely impressive in the group stage. As you say, they're in a group with Milan. They top the group. Did they win both games against Milan?
They did. They won both games. They only drew. They drew against Salzburg. They had amazing difficulty against Salzburg.
The Milan away game is actually played in Dresde. It's not played at the San Siro. UEFA sanctions were in play at the time, so Milan had to travel. But I think even if it was played in the San Siro, this Ajax team would have given them a pretty tight game. Franco Baresi own goal, very rare thing. Gave them the second goal to win it.
And it's enough for them to top the group, which, again, it sort of points to the quality of this team all the way through it. They knock out Ajax split in the quarterfinals and take Bayern to the cleaners in the second leg of the semi-final. Crazily good performance to set up a Champions League final appearance against our old friends Milan again.
For the third time. Just going back to the semi-final against Bayern where they win 5-2, there is quite a key moment in that game. Bayern get a penalty as their second goal, and it's given because Danny Blind handballs in the box, and it looks like a deliberate. It looks like he's pulling a Brian Robson. So Shane, we talked West Brom a couple of weeks ago, and Brian Robson against Liverpool at Anfield made this incredible kind of left-handed save when he was an outfield player. Danny Blind is not as spectacular that, but it's definitely he's motioned towards saving it. The referee of the night was Sander Pol, and this is a semi-final. If Blind gets sent off, he misses the final. And for whatever reason, and I don't think Sander Pol's been able to come out and say what his thinking was, but he doesn't send Danny Blind off, and therefore he gets a pathway into the final. And it's just one of those moments where it feels to me a referee has kind of understood the emotion of an occasion, and maybe probably not understood the rules specifically, but he's used his judgment because there's enough in Danny Blind's handling of the ball to say maybe it wasn't deliberate and maybe there is doubt. And yes, it's a penalty, but can I send a player off for whatever reason? But it's quite nice that the referees can make those decisions, emotional decisions in the game.
Well, I actually watched that on YouTube in preparation for this, and I do believe that Danny Blind sends said referee a rather large gift basket once a Christmas. Because there is absolutely no doubting. I watched him went off. Not quite as obvious as, say, I don't know, Luis Suarez with his handball in, I think it was the World Cup. Not quite that obvious, but I did look at it and go, no, I think that looked like it was send-offable.
Definitely so. And yeah, as you say, you have those moments which are kind of decisive. Fate comes to play a hand in it, I guess, and it sets up the final. And
Graham, I feel sorry to over talk you there. There's another thing that happens in that Bayern Munich semi-final. I don't know if you guys have had the chance to see it. The halftime entertainment is incredibly interesting. Andre Rief, I think it's Rief.
He does a violin, doesn't he?
He does a violin. He plays the violin to the crowd at half-time. That is the half-time entertainment. And the crowd absolutely get behind it and start humming away to it. And the whole crowd are humming away to Andre Rief, who's there on his violin at the half-time Super Bowl interval.
How come this happened?
Shane?
I've no idea. But I just remember I knew about it because ironically, I believe my wife was watching Andre Rieu and they popped it up as an actual reference during a concert when there was like commentary in the background. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that for an actual story. And it's still stuck in my head because I'm like, well, that's nothing that I would have heard of at a football game previously. Rioting, yes. And apparently you can turn the lights off in a Champions League final and you can bury money in the backyard of an auntie's house. But the violin at halftime, that was way outside of what I expected.
It's a touch of class, isn't it? That's genuine.
It is. It's classy. It's different.
He's done it a few times.
I mean, I would have expected more, perhaps the Scorpions singing, Rock You Like a Hurricane, but, if you're in, doing something German, but no, let's do that.
Just as a tiny distraction, I didn't get a chance to mention this in the last 2 weeks ago podcast when we were talking about West Bromwich Albion and the great man motivator that is Ron Atkinson. But I heard Dean Saunders once tell a story when he was at Aston Villa and Ron Atkinson was in charge, and there was a half. Apparently, one half time it wasn't going great in the first half. And at halftime, they had Renee from Renee and Renata, you know, the novelty 1980s kind of novelty,
Save
late
your love,
70s
my darling.
novelty hit.
Save your love.
Save your love, my darling. Yeah, exactly. So the Renee and from Renee and Renata, but this is how Dean Saunders told this story. And I think he's relatively local. It might surprise you to learn that he maybe isn't as Latin as he might have. I don't know about that. So Ron Atkinson got him in at half time. Players just told him to sit down. And Renee from Renee and Renata sang Nessun Dorma at full blast in the changing room. And this was the team talking at the end of it. Ron Atkinson, when he finished, Ron Atkinson just said, "That's what you call passion. Get out there." And that was the team talk. So that's halftime entertainment.
That is brilliant. That's come out of the kit bag, that one. That's excellent. I knew we could get something massively quirky into this extremely talented discussion about the Ajax team. I knew we could pull out some story that made me go, there we go. There's the weirdness that I've been looking for.
Shane, as I knew you were coming on, and I knew the team
brilliant.
didn't have the biggest scandals going on, yet I think there is an opportunity to get you involved in a scandal. Part of this incredible Ajax winning team was a defender who only played, I think, in about 55% of the matches for Ajax. A youngster.
I love this man. I know one of my favourite stories that first came over. Love it. I was so happy with him at Chelsea. What he did at Chelsea, magic. The man was magic.
Just for those who are listening that may not be aware of Winston Bogart's amazing enterprise.
He had the part I love, he didn't even negotiate his own salary. He was so surprised by the amount of money Chelsea were paying him. Like, he was shocked. When that transfer went through, he went, "You're paying me what? I didn't negotiate this. This is excellent." So that when they didn't play him, he's like, "Fine, I'll take all the money you give me. I'll never earn this again. I am staying here." They put him in the under-17s. They put him everywhere. I believe he was a car park attendant by the end. It was excellent, and he still wouldn't move. You couldn't move him under any circumstances. It was gold. What was he doing? He lived in Holland at the time, I think, dealing with a nightclub. Fabulous man.
Gianluca Vialli signed him, put him on a ridiculous contract, as you mentioned. Vialli was sacked less than 2 weeks later, and Jari came in and thought, "I don't fancy him." Just wanted to get rid of him. So what Bogart did, the rumour has it, was running his nightclub in Amsterdam whilst getting paid £40,000 a week by Chelsea Football Club for a 4-year period.
Apparently, he used to fly back for training. Literally, he got to a point whereby he knew he wasn't going to be selected at the end, and he'd just fly back for the training so that he could make sure he fulfilled his contract. That's a man that I admire. To be fair, Winston Bogarde before then, he was a Dutch international. He wasn't a bad player. I remember watching, because I used to watch a lot of Spanish football when I first got into football in the late 90s and 2000s. And it's when Van Gaal literally took the entirety of Holland over to play for Barcelona. Both Ajax and PSV Eindhoven teams merged into one. And it worked, I think, for the first year he was there in 97 or 98. I believe Barca won the title. And then it went downhill quite spectacularly as a lot of the guys started to be garbage. And Bogarde was one of those guys that was amazingly garbage. Before then, he was full Dutch international and centre-back. But he lost his way at Barca. Chelsea bought him and he went, "Thanks for coming. I'll take the retirement fund." Oh. Comfortably one of my favourite players, just based on the story. Nothing to do with football ability. That is a man that I like.
And Winston Bogarde's contribution is probably a man most known for his lack of game time and his being one of the worst signings, if not the worst signing, purely based on a money versus performance versus outlay. Because, of course, they just release him at the end. And, Jamie, where does he go to after his Chelsea days are finished?
At some point, he gets back to Ajax. But I don't think he ever plays again. I think he probably goes as a full-time nightclub owner. I don't think Winston Bogart does actually play football again. I would have to rely on the brilliance of Wikipedia to help me with that one.
I see no sign of any further appearances from him. So it is an incredible drop-off for something that isn't obviously injury-based.
And ironically, in 95-96, when they came runner-up, he made the equal most appearances for Ajax.
Yeah, he played in the 95-96 Champions League final that Ajax went on to try to defend their trophy, but lost out to Juventus on penalty kicks. He plays in that final.
I think he almost plays every game. As I said, he's got the equal most appearances to Van der Sar.
I feel we're drifting, but let's get back to the key point. So I can confirm that Renee and Renata, it's not Renee, it's actually Renata. Renato is the is the bloke, and he is from the West Midlands, and Wikipedia certainly thinks that story is correct and that he does sing Ness and Dawn at half-time at a very poor, which either means one of two things, that either it happened or I have edited the Renee and Renata Wikipedia page, which is equally possible as well. But to move back to probably even more relevant stuff, this final is set up, it's an amazing game, and it's set up for some elements of fate, particularly Frank Rijkaard, isn't it? I mean, there's this... I always find it interesting how many times you kind of... Those stories which appear to be set in fate, decided are going to happen, don't happen. And we had one the other week, we were talking about Fulham playing Hamburg in the semi-final of the Europa League, and the final was in Hamburg, and if you're a Hamburg fan and you've got to the semi-final, and in the nicest possible way, you're only playing Fulham. If you can't, this is happening. It's destiny that we're going to play that final, and it doesn't happen. But this one, if you were going to write the Frank Rijkaard script, it is what should my last game in football be?
It's absolutely fairy tale stuff, and there's a couple of key things that go on with Frank Rijkaard in this game. At half-time, when it's 0-0, Van Gaal, in the spirit of Ron Atkinson, doesn't bring in Renata from Renata, but he does hand over to Frank Rijkaard and allow Frank Rijkaard to sing his own version of Nessun Dorma to the Ajax faithful to inspire them. And, laced with emotion, who knows what he was going through in order to inspire his team on. But whatever he was able to say, it did resonate, because obviously they go on and they snatch it with the Kluivert goal, which we should talk about as well. But there's an image of Rijkaard from a camera from the side that catches him when they've won the trophy and they've won the Champions League for Ajax. The sheer joy and emotion in him is incredible. I mean, here's a man who would have probably been willing to give anything for that one last hurrah with his local team, almost his last game ever against his former employers, where he's had incredible success. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And unlike Alan Shearer, who celebrated Blackburn winning the championship by painting a fence, Rijkaard celebrated by going and starting his own underwear company.
Sorry, go back to
Yeah, I was going to ask you to go back
please.
there.
Nothing against Frank Rijkaard, who I've got the utmost respect for, but frankly, I want to hear about the painting of fence.
Well, I stand to be corrected, and I'm very open to that. But I heard quotes or read quotes back in the mid-90s when Alan Shearer was asked, when Blackburn won the Premier League in that incredible 1994-95 season, Alan Shearer was asked, how did you celebrate? To which Shearer replied, I went home and I painted the garden fence. I mean, for me, that sounds plausible and accurate for, a man of Shearer's stature.
Surprised he didn't go to Winston Bogart's nightclub. Anyway, you can't have everything.
It's a landmark occasion for Rijkaard, but it's also a kind of I guess it's the announcement of the arrival of Kluivert, isn't it?
It sounds like it's the announcement of a lot of them, to be fair. I mean, even Overmars is another one. He's one of my favourite players of all time, Marc Overmars, as a winger. My God, the Flying Dutchman was pretty special. He'd only been on for a short time, hadn't he, in the final? Kluivert, he was a super sub, wasn't he?
Yeah, he came on for Litmanen. He was carrying a bit of injury. Van Gaal actually changed his tactics slightly. He put both Kluivert and Kanu up front, almost like a twin strike partnership. And the Kluivert's goal is fantastic because I think it's a wonderful ball from Rijkaard that puts him in. What I love about that goal, bizarrely, is somebody absolutely can't stand defending, is Baresi. And we all know where strikers have scored brilliant goals and they kind of rely on instinct. But defenders obviously rely on instinct as well. And I don't think I encourage you to watch it. It's brilliant. The way that Baresi can see as the ball's going through to Kluivert exactly what's going to happen. He's anticipated. His instinct has kind of pushed him towards trying to get anything on the ball, but he's a microsecond too late. He's a microsecond too late because Kluivert just kind of swings out a leg. I mean, I think he swings out his left boot. Doesn't make clean contact with it, but makes enough contact with it that takes it past Rossi and goal.
That they've got Kluivert coming off the bench is a sort of clue as to how strong that side is. Litmanen, he was the second top scorer in the Champions League that year, and got 6. But when you look across the season, Kluivert and Litmanen with 20 odd goals each across the year are the kind of top scorers. But there are goals across the team. Overmars, Kanu, the Dwarba brothers. That side is just it just has goals in them. It's
got a lovely spread. I mean, even the defenders with Blind and De Boer get on this, and Rijkaard as your defensive players get on the score sheet. So it just shows that the danger is pretty much everywhere on the pitch.
So 94-95 is kind of the peak. I mean, it's not like it falls off straight away. They win the league the following season. So, strong again, and sort of quite comfortably there. And they do well in Europe again as well.
They do. As defending champions, they go all the way to the final where they meet another Italian heavyweight in Juventus.
That ends up as tight as it's possible to get, doesn't it? It ultimately decided on penalties. I mean, we're going to talk about how this side disbands and some of the specific reasons behind it. But actually, they haven't lost too many in that season. It's broadly the same side, I think. Is it Seedorf has gone by then?
Seedorf goes in 96 on a Bosman. He goes to Sampdoria. Edgar Davids goes in 96 to Milan. Michael Reisinger also goes in 96 to Milan, as does Peter van Vossen and Nwankwo Kanu as well. So this is really the start of the band breaking up. And in the next 2 seasons, Van Gaal has gone, and pretty much all of the players that were in that incredible Ajax team, minus a couple, Edwin van der Sar, who doesn't move on till 99 to Juve, have moved on to, you say bigger and better things, but it's hard to be bigger than better than European champions undefeated in a whole season.
And how much of that is the Bosman effect?
Well, they lose 4 players on Bosman. Now, they're 4 players that they brought through the youth ranks, so in Reisinger, David Seedorf and Patrick Kluivert. So they've spent nothing to get these players in, but they've invested incredible amounts of time and energy.
Not just that, but let's not kid ourselves. That's 4 full internationals they've lost through. They haven't gone and lost someone you want out of contract. They've lost players that are worth a significant amount of money. They're all in their prime, young and fit.
Yeah, and it just kind of demonstrate that as well. I mean, Edwin van der Sar wasn't one of the ones that moved on a Bosman. They did get a fee for him. Edwin van der Sar goes on and plays in 5 Champions League finals. That's a record for a goalkeeper. The most Champions League finals is 6. The most European Cup finals is 8. Paolo Maldini. Clarence Seedorf plays in 5 Champions League finals. Edgar Davids plays in 4 Champions League finals. So these are players that, if you'd have kept that spine together, you can't imagine exactly what brilliance Ajax would have gone on. Could they have gone back into Europe the following year and won it again? Could they have dominated Europe for a period of 5 or 6 years? If you compare this to the class of 92, just to get my Manchester United reference into this episode of the podcast, and Ferguson was able to bring, similarly, young players through that would go on to win championships and Champions Leagues. Ferguson was able to hold them together. Ryan Giggs stays for the whole time and wins 13 championships. Paul Scholes wins 12 championships. Gary Neville, I think, has won something like 11 championships because he was able to keep them together. But obviously that wasn't happening in the Netherlands with Ajax Amsterdam. Van Gaal himself was off to learn Spanish and enjoy some tapas in the Catalonian capital of Barcelona.
It is worth, of course, saying for anyone who isn't familiar and hasn't been listening to our podcast on FC Liège from about a year or so ago now, that the Bosman effect had come in, was it 95?
It was 95. It took Bosman a few years. He started the proceedings in 91, but it took a few years to get that ruling through.
It's probably the most abrupt impact, possibly of beyond the effect on Bosman, as we know, didn't really benefit from much of this himself personally, but it's probably the widest impact of the Bosman ruling. Actually, it's difficult to imagine a team quite so as affected as this.
Oh, and crippling for the club too. I mean, how much transfer fees have you just lost after you've put that much investment in? That's absolutely crippling. Replacing them is impossible.
I wouldn't hold too much sympathy for Ajax these days. I mean, they did manage to get 90 million out of Manchester United for Anthony, so they've clearly learned from their time of being burnt under Bosman.
Was Donny van der Beek also Ajax, or was he somewhere else?
They did well with that one as well, and
Donny van der Beek was a joy. That worked well for you.
I think if we just use that as a small kind of case study, we can safely say that Ajax have learned from their time of when they were burned quite severely, losing players under the Bosman ruling. They've definitely, that's evened itself out. The yin and yang is one with one another.
Obviously, Van Gaal, so he sticks around until 97. At that point, he gets poached. He goes to Barcelona. Van Gaal's achieved an awful lot in football across the world. But is there a point at which, or a case to which you could argue that it was never as good again?
I think you can argue that case. I think Shane mentioned Van Gaal does win the double with Barcelona in his first season. He does win championships at Bayern Munich. But, I mean, almost anyone apart from Harry Kane is capable of winning a championship at Bayern Munich. So I do think that it's the sweetest moment for Louis van Gaal. But, I mean, his stock at this point is going to be riding high. And if he sees the glorious opportunities to go on and manage Europe's finest, which is exactly what he does, he goes on and manages some massive, massive football teams, and you're pretty much securing your future at that point. If we just look back to the budget of Ajax under Van Gaal and the salaries, there probably was a case for him to think, I could probably go and earn a bit more if I go to Spain and take the Barcelona job.
In that second year in Barca, or the 98-99, his first full year, he's pulled in Reitziger, Bogaard, De Boer, and Kluivert. And when I say De Boer, I mean both. And that's the Ajax boys he brought in, but then he brought in like Philip Koku as well, and Bourgeois and Zenden. So he's pulled in two PSV boys as well. I think he keeps going after that too. And I'm like, that's where it started to fall off. He lost a little bit of the Spanish heart.
It seems really unlikely that a Dutch manager might have an over-reliance on bringing in Dutch footballers at a big-name club.
Are we going to mention Donny van der Beek once more?
I'm pretty confident both won't make it through the edit. That'll be fine. We can't have two. I just couldn't resist it.
Just on the final and what happens after the 94-95, we're pretty much familiar in England with the open top bus celebration. It's become part of football folklore in England and adopted by many other nations around the world. But in Amsterdam, when the team were flying back from Vienna after winning and being so victorious in Vienna, their plane circles over Amsterdam, where there are absolutely tens and hundreds of thousands of people waiting for the team to arrive. And it banks to give all the players a view of what's awaiting for them there, which is pretty spectacular. But not only that, when they do arrive, they don't do the open top bus. They do the open canal trip, where they parade the trophy around the canals. And what makes this even sweeter for me personally is by some ridiculous quirk of faith, I actually arrived in Amsterdam for the first time in my life the moment they were parading the trophy, the European Cup. in Amsterdam. I was on a football tour at the time. The company we booked with had gone bust. We were stuck at Dover for about 9 hours. We had to pull together money to pay for our own crossing. When we got to Amsterdam, there were no games arranged because the company had gone bust. But as we arrived, and this is before the days of mobile phone, so in 95, the coach was stuck to a halt because obviously it was just chaos in Amsterdam. And we had no idea what was going on because it was before the internet. And then we realised that they were parading the trophy. So it was like giddy, silly little boys at the time, loving football. We just jumped off and scattered to get a look of the trophy. No idea where the bus was. No idea where our hotel was. No idea if the company even booked a hotel for us. Yeah, we were able, by some quirk of fate, be able to see the trophy being paraded. And we did find our way back to the bus. And the bus took us to our hostel, which wasn't as glamorous as the Amsterdam celebration around the canal.
That is too good. And I love the idea of the canal celebration. And I'd love to see Stuart McCall repeat his fantastic celebration for Bradford City's Premiership party on that. He quite gloriously falls off the car roof in quite a drunken state. The consequences would be far worse if you if you take the celebration to that level on a canal boat. Much more at stake. This is an incredible side, and we should probably get to thinking about ranking and rating this side. And as ever, we have 5 glorious categories of greatness, with all-time greats at the top, followed by true greats below that, touch greats, edge greatness, and another one, but there's no danger of any of those in the lower echelons being used this time. This is no Zaire. Jamie, where are you going to begin with this side?
So I'm going to start by just giving you some numbers. So Shane's already mentioned about the volume of international appearances. This particular group have go on to have 1,200 international appearances as a collective. That's an average of 77 per player. I mean, that's a pretty good international career. The average age, which we haven't even touched on, was one of the youngest ever, if not the youngest ever, which is 23.4, which is incredible to win the Champions League. They have a combined total of over 35 Champions League finals that they've played in as a collective, which again is an average of 2 per player, which is pretty easy when you think that the team got to the final twice, but it wasn't always the same personnel. And I mean, this is incredible. Total honours in terms of the trophies these guys have won. It averages out at 15 trophies, 15 titles of a cup or a Super Cup or a league title or a Champions League title. 15 titles per player. Edwin van der Sar has 27 titles alone. He's one of the most decorated footballers in the history of our game, which is incredible. And I'll flavour that with another team in our all-time greatness table. Manchester United, 1998, 1919, which we covered. They have an average, that side, of 15 trophies per player. They have a Champions League final average of 1. And they have an international caps record of 67. So, I mean, we ranked Manchester United as 98-99 as one of the greatest teams of all time. For me, Ajax, Amsterdam, 94-95 eclipse Manchester United. And I think they'll take some beating. They are 100% all-time greats. And I would argue one of the greatest football teams that's ever played this game.
In your list of accomplishments, you actually missed out on number of meltdowns in international sides in the change rooms at half-time, which I believe Seedorf and Davids would probably hold the record, just the 2 of them. So, I mean, that's well worth mentioning too. I mean, they destroyed a couple of Dutch teams, didn't they? Certainly ruined a couple of Dutch coaches in their time. I mean, my God, the meltdowns those 2 used to have.
I think that's the reason why Seedorf left in the end. He just fell out with Van Gaal. But we haven't even touched on the madness of Louis van Gaal. In the final against Milan, I don't know if you've seen it, Marcel Desailly nearly takes Jari Litmanen's head off. His foot's that high.
Yep.
And Van Gaal goes to the touchline, to the 4th official, in a similar way that he did with Mike Dean when he was Manchester United manager, and throws himself to the floor to, show that the Arsenal player was simulating diving. He actually simulates a karate kick next to the 4th official to showcase how high and how dangerous he thought the kick was. So we've not touched on the madness of this group. We've not touched on the madness of the ringleader.
Shane, even aside from madness, how would you rank this side?
Oh, all-time greats. This is one of my favourite teams. I mean, my God, talent everywhere. It's just silly. It fueled the whole Dutch national team for 15 years. It's just stupid levels of talent. Just ridiculous. They're easily, for pure talent, they'd be top 10 teams of all time at all. And the fact that they're almost all Dutch, that's something you don't get to see much in football these days, is one nationality dominating a team so spectacularly and just based on youth and no transfers. I mean, this is easily great. This is top category by a country mile. It's a walk in the park.
I can't argue. It's clearly all-time great. I mean, Jamie has made a good point though by pointing out how much better than they are than the Man United side we put in earlier, which has given me some food for thought for our promotion relegation special at the end of the season, where we might decide to demote a team. You gave me a bit of an idea and a thought on that one, Jamie. We might need to revisit the Man United treble winners.
Don't forget, we've got Swindon Town in the mix who could find themselves getting an unpredictable promotion.
Yeah, I know where this goes. Undoubtedly mad, undoubtedly geniuses. Louis van Gaal's Ajax, all-time greats. That's all we have time for. Shane, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy.
An actual team of greats this time.
Slightly disappointing that they're absolutely brilliant. There was a lack of controversy. We'll need to rectify that the next time I'm on.
Yeah, definitely so. Jamie, thank you again as ever.
My pleasure. Shane, there's a whole bag of football team greats with scandal absolutely dripping from them that we can bring into a future episode and get your enthusiasm bubbling at such incredible scandals like burying brown envelopes in people's gardens.
Thank you. Less talent, more Winston Bogard, please.
Definitely so. Okay, so that's all we have time for this week. As a reminder, you can see details of all the teams we've covered and our somewhat erratic rankings on our revamped website, thegreatestteam.co. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please like us, review us, subscribe, tell a friend. We'd love as many people as possible to listen to this and join the debate. Next week, we're going across the pond, back to the glory days of the North American Soccer League, with the incredible and slightly lost story of the Rochester Lancers. So we'll see you then.